The gate clanged shut, a sharp metallic sound that sliced through the humid Virginia air, and my heart stopped. I turned, expecting to see the stable hand. But it was him, Elliot. His blue eyes glinting with something I couldn't name. His hand still on the latch. "You're not going anywhere, Caleb," he said, voice low, and I realized I wasn't just here for the horses. The summer of 2023 was supposed to be my escape. At 22, I'd fled my small-town Ohio life, where every whisper in church pews felt like a judgment on my soul. I'd landed in Virginia, chasing a job at Willow Creek Stables, thinking I could hide in the rhythm of hoofbeats and hay bales. My parents thought I was finding myself after dropping out of college. I just wanted to breathe without their eyes on me. The truth was, I'd been running from the part of me that woke up every night, heart pounding, dreaming of someone I wasn't supposed to want. Elliot was the first thing I noticed when I arrived. He was 24, lean and sun-kissed, with a grin that could unravel anyone. He ran the stables like he was born to it, his hands steady on the reins, his voice soft but firm when he spoke to the horses. I told myself I admired his skill, nothing more. But every time he brushed past me in the tack room, my skin burned, and I hated myself for it. I'd been taught to bury those feelings, to pray them away, but they clawed their way back, stronger each time. "Focus, Caleb," Elliot said that first week, tossing me a curry comb. "Horses can smell fear, and you reek of it." I laughed it off, but his words stuck. I was terrified not of the horses, but of him, of the way his laugh made my chest ache, the way his eyes lingered a second too long. I told myself I was imagining it. I had to be. This was rural Virginia, not some liberal city where people like me could exist without consequence. The stables were a world unto themselves, a sprawl of red barns and rolling fields, the Blue Ridge Mountains a hazy backdrop. I threw myself into the work-mucking stalls, grooming horses, repairing fences, hoping exhaustion would drown out the thoughts I couldn't control. But Elliot was always there, teaching me how to saddle a horse, his hands guiding mine, his breath warm against my neck as he corrected my grip. "You're a natural," he'd say, and I'd duck my head, afraid he'd see the truth in my eyes. One evening, after a long day, he asked me to stay late. "Need help with the new mare," he said, casual, like it was nothing. I should have said no. I should have known better. But I followed him to the far paddock, where the mare grazed under a sky streaked with pink and gold. That's when he locked the gate. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to face. "You're not going anywhere, Caleb." I froze, my pulse hammering. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the leather and sweat on him, close enough that I could see the flecks of green in his blue eyes. "It means," he said, "I see you, and I know you see me." I wanted to run. I wanted to scream that he was wrong, that I was just here for the job, that I wasn't like him. But the lie stuck in my throat. Because I did see him. I saw the way he moved, the way he laughed, the way he looked at me like I was more than the scared kid from Ohio. And in that moment, with the gate locked and the world shut out, I felt something I'd never allowed myself to feel, possibility. But possibility was dangerous. I'd grown up hearing sermons about sin, about people like me burning for eternity. My father's voice echoed in my head, calling it an abomination. I'd seen what happened to kids who got caught shunned, beaten, sent away. Elliot didn't know what he was asking. He didn't know the cost. I can't. I said, stepping back, my boots crunching on the gravel. You don't understand. Then make me understand, he said, his voice soft but unyielding. He didn't move closer, but he didn't back away either. He stood there, waiting, like he knew I was fighting a war inside myself. I turned away, staring at the mare, her coat gleaming in the fading light. Where I'm from, this doesn't end well. People get hurt. Families turn their backs. My voice cracked, and I hated how small it sounded. I'm not brave like you. Elliot was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You think I'm brave? I'm terrified, Caleb. But I'm more terrified of pretending to be something I'm not. He reached out, his hand hovering near mine, not touching but close enough to feel the warmth. You don't have to decide tonight. But you don't have to run, either. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The weight of his words, the weight of what I wanted, was too much. I walked back to the bunkhouse that night, my mind a tangle of fear and longing. I told myself I'd leave in the morning, catch a bus back to Ohio, bury this summer and everything it stirred in me. But when I woke up, the sun was rising over the mountains, and Elliot was already in the stables, whistling as he fed the horses. And I stayed. That was the beginning. Not of riding lessons, but of something bigger. Something that would break me open and rebuild me in ways I never expected. I didn't know then that the locked gate was just the start that love could be a rebellion, a fight, a home. All I knew was that Elliot saw me. And for the first time, I didn't want to hide. The days after the gate incident blurred into a haze of routine and tension. I threw myself into work at Willow Creek, hoping the grind would silence the questions Elliot had stirred in me. But every glance he sent my way, every brush of his shoulder as we passed in the barn, felt like a spark threatening to ignite something I wasn't ready to face. Morning started early, the air thick with dew and the scent of hay. I'd saddle horses for the day's clients, mostly rich kids from D.C., who treated the stables like a summer camp. Elliot was different with them, all charm and easy laughs. But I caught the moments when his mask slipped. When a client's father made a snide comment about city boys working the stables, Elliot's jaw tightened, and I saw the same fear in his eyes that lived in mine. We were both hiding, just in different ways. One afternoon, as we cleaned the tack room, he broke the silence. You ever think about what you'd do if you could be anyone? His voice was casual, but his eyes were sharp, watching me. I shrugged, scrubbing a bridle harder than necessary. I don't know. Maybe a vet. Always liked animals. It was a safe answer, one that didn't touch the truth. I couldn't imagine a life where I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Elliot leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I'd be a rancher out west. Big sky. No one telling me who I can be. He paused, then added, or who I can love. The word hung between us, heavy and dangerous. I froze, the bridle slipping from my hands. He didn't push, just picked it up and handed it back to me, his fingers grazing mine. That touch stayed with me all day, a quiet rebellion against the voice in my head screaming to run. By the end of the second week, I was unraveling. I'd catch myself watching him, how he'd calm a spooked horse with a whisper, how his laugh carried across the fields. I told myself it was admiration, respect, anything but what it was. But at night, alone in the bunkhouse, I couldn't lie to myself. I wanted him. And that one was a knife, cutting through every defense I'd built. One evening, a storm rolled in, the kind that turned the sky bruise purple and sent the horses skittish. Elliot asked me to help secure the barns before the rain hit. We worked fast, locking gates and checking stalls, the wind whipping around us. As we finished, the first drops fell, heavy and cold. "Come on," he said, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward the hayloft. My heart pounded, not from the storm, but from his touch, firm and sure. The loft was warm, smelling of straw and old wood. We sat on a bale, catching our breath, the rain drumming on the roof. "You're quiet tonight," Elliot said, his voice soft. I stared at my hands, rough from work, afraid to meet his eyes. "Just tired." I lied. He didn't buy it. "You're not tired, Caleb. You're scared." He shifted closer, his knee brushing mine. "Talk to me." I wanted to. God, I wanted to spill everything: the shame, the fear, the way my father's voice still lived in my head. But all I could manage was, what if this is wrong? My voice was barely audible over the rain. Elliot didn't flinch. "Wrong according to who?" "Your dad. Some preacher." "Were you?" He leaned in, his breath warm against my cheek. "What does Caleb think?" I didn't have an answer. Not then. But his question cracked something open, a tiny fissure in the wall I'd built around myself. Before I could respond, a crack of thunder shook the loft, and the lights flickered out. In the dark, Elliot's hand found mine, steady and warm. "I'm right here," he said. And for the first time, I didn't pull away. The storm raged on, but in that loft, it felt like the world had narrowed to just us. We didn't kiss, didn't cross that line, but we sat there, hands clasped, until the rain slowed. When we finally climbed down, the air was cooler, the sky clearing. I felt different, like I'd left a piece of my fear behind in the loft. But I knew it wasn't over. The world outside the stables was waiting, and it wasn't kind to people like us. The next morning, a new client arrived, a man named Pastor Dan, who ran a youth group in town. He was all smiles, quoting scripture as he booked writing lessons for his kids. But when he saw Elliot and me laughing together, his eyes narrowed, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "You boys seem close," he said, his tone too sharp to be friendly. Elliot just grinned, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. I knew that look. I'd seen it back home, in the eyes of people who suspected. That night, I lay awake, Pastor Dan's words looping in my head. I thought about Ohio, about the kid in my high school who'd been outed and disappeared after his parents sent him to conversion camp. I thought about Elliot, fearless and open, and how easy it would be for someone like Pastor Dan to ruin him. I wanted to protect him, but I didn't know how. All I knew was that I couldn't keep running from myself. Not anymore. Pastor Dan's presence lingered like a shadow over Willow Creek. His youth group came every Saturday, a pack of loud teens who treated the horses like props for their selfies. But it was his watchful eyes that unsettled me, always scanning, always judging. I caught him staring at Elliot and me one morning as we led a pair of Maras to the paddock. "Careful, boys," he said, his smile tight. "Folks might get the wrong idea." Elliot laughed it off, but I felt the weight of his words settle in my gut. I tried to focus on work, but the stables no longer felt like a sanctuary. Elliot noticed my silence. "Don't let him get to you," he said one afternoon, as we stacked hay bales. "Guys like that thrive on fear." His hand brushed mine, deliberate this time, and my breath caught. I pulled away, not because I wanted to, but because I could still feel Pastor Dan's eyes on us. even though he was gone. That night, Elliot invited me to his cabin, a small place tucked behind the main barn. Just to talk, he said, but his smile promised more. I hesitated, my father's voice echoing in my head. But the pull of Elliot was stronger. His cabin was cluttered with books and sketches of horses, a cozy mess that felt like him. He poured us whiskey from a bottle he said was older than both of us. And we sat on the floor, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. You're still fighting it, aren't you? He said, sipping his drink. His eyes were soft but piercing. I stared at the floor, the whiskey burning my throat. I don't know how to stop, I admitted. Where I'm from, it's not just a sin. It's a death sentence. Elliot set his glass down and moved closer, his knee touching mine. You're not there anymore, Caleb. You're here, with me. His words were a lifeline, but I was still drowning. What if someone finds out? Pastor Dan. He already suspects something. What if Elliot cut me off, his hand on my cheek, forcing me to look at him? Then we deal with it. Together. His thumb brushed my skin, and for a moment, I let myself believe it could be that simple. But it wasn't. The next day, Pastor Dan cornered me in the tack room. I've seen boys like you before, he said, his voice low. Lost souls, led astray. There's help for that. You know, programs to fix you. My stomach churned. Memories of that kid from high school flooding back. I mumbled something about work and fled, but his words clung to me like damp hay. I told Elliot that evening, expecting him to brush it off again. Instead, his face hardened. He's a bully with a Bible, he said. But he's not wrong about one thing: this place isn't safe for us. Not yet. He grabbed my hand, his grip tight. Come with me tonight. Somewhere we can be ourselves. Just for a few hours. He drove us to a bar an hour away, a place he called friendly. The dim lights and pulsing music felt like another world. Men danced together, unafraid. And for the first time, I saw what life could be. Elliot pulled me onto the dance floor, his hands on my waist, and I let myself move with him, the whiskey and his touch loosening the knot in my chest. This is what I want for us, he whispered, his lips close to my ear. No hiding. But the high didn't last. On the drive back, I saw a truck tailing us. Too close. Probably nothing, Elliot said, but his knuckles were white on the wheel. When we reached the stables, the truck sped off, but I couldn't shake the feeling we'd been seen. The next morning, Pastor Dan was waiting by the barn, his eyes cold. Late night. Boys, he said, and my blood ran cold. Elliot didn't flinch. Just living our lives. Dan. But as we walked away, he whispered, we need to be careful. He's not just talk. I nodded, but the fear was back. Sharper now. I wanted to believe in Elliot's world, where we could be free. But Pastor Dan's shadow was growing longer, and I wasn't sure we could outrun it. The fear followed me like a stray dog, snapping at my heels. Every creak of the barn, every glance from a client, felt like a warning. Elliot tried to keep things light, cracking jokes as we mucked stalls. But I could see the worry in his eyes too. We were careful now, kept our distance during the day, saved our moments for the quiet of his cabin or the hayloft after hours. But the secrecy was suffocating, a reminder of everything I'd tried to escape. Pastor Dan's youth group was back the next Saturday, and he brought a friend, a man named Roy, with a handshake like a vice and eyes that didn't blink. Heard you boys are good with horses, Roy said, but his tone was all wrong, like he was sizing us up for something else. Elliot stayed calm, but I could feel his tension, like a horse ready to bolt. That afternoon, Roy lingered after the group left, talking to Dan in hushed tones by the gate. I caught fragments of their conversation, words like morality and influence. My stomach twisted. They're planning something, I told Elliot later, my voice low as we brushed down the horses. He nodded, his jaw tight. We need to lay low for a bit. Let them lose interest. But laying low felt like surrender. That night, in his cabin, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I can't keep doing this, I said, pacing, hiding, pretending it's killing me. Elliot stood, pulling me into his arms. Then let's stop hiding, he said, his voice fierce. Let's leave. Start over somewhere new. His eyes were bright with hope, but all I could see was my father's face. The disappointment. The shame. Leave, I echoed, pulling back. And go where? I've got no money. No degree. My family would. I stopped, the words choking me. Elliot's hands found mine. You'd have me, he said. That's enough for a start. His certainty was a lifeline, but I was too scared to grab it. The next day, Roy was back, alone this time. He watched us from the fence, his phone in hand, snapping photos of the horses, or so he said. Elliot's face was stone as he led a mare past Roy. Got a problem? He asked, his voice sharp. Roy just smiled. Just keeping an eye out. Community's gotta stay pure. I felt sick, my hands shaking as I tightened a saddle. That night, Elliot was quiet. His usual spark dimmed. They're not gonna let this go, he said, staring out his cabin window. Dan's got influence in town. Roy's his muscle. I sat beside him, my heart pounding. What do we do? I asked. He turned to me, his eyes fierce. We fight. Not with fists, but by living. By being us. Unapologetically. His words lit something in me, but fear was still louder. The next morning, a letter was nailed to the barn door, and signed but clear, leave or face consequences. Elliot tore it down, his hands shaking with rage. They don't get to win, he said, but I could hear the crack in his voice. For the first time, I saw him scared, and it broke something in me. I kissed him then, right there in the barn, not caring who might see. It was reckless, desperate, but it felt like defiance. His arms wrapped around me, and for a moment, the world was just us. But as we pulled apart, I saw Roy's truck in the distance, idling. The fight was coming, and I wasn't sure we were ready. The letter changed everything. The stables, once my refuge, felt like a trap. Every shadow held a threat, every sound a warning. Elliot tried to keep us grounded, his hand finding mine in stolen moments. But the weight of Roy and Pastor Dan's presence was crushing. We kept working, but the air was thick with tension. The other stable hands started to notice, their glances lingering too long. Something's up with you two. One of them, Jake, said one morning, half joking. Elliot laughed it off, but I could barely breathe. Jake was harmless, but if he suspected, others might too. That afternoon, Pastor Dan showed up unannounced, his Bible tucked under his arm like a weapon. Thought I'd check on the boys, he said to the stable manager, but his eyes were on us. He lingered, quoting verses about purity while we saddled horses. I wanted to disappear, But Elliot stood tall, his voice steady. "We're just doing our jobs, Dan." The pastor's smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, Elliot pulled me into the hayloft. "We can't keep living like this," he said, his voice urgent. "I've got a friend in Colorado. Runs a ranch. Needs hands. We could go there." His eyes searched mine, pleading. I wanted to say yes, to believe in a future where we could be free. But the fear was a chain around my heart. What if they follow us? I asked. What if it's the same everywhere? Elliot's face softened. It won't be. Not everywhere. We'll find our place. He kissed me, slow and deep. And for a moment, I let myself dream of a life where we didn't have to hide. But the dream shattered when we heard footsteps below. We froze, peering through the loft's slats. Roy, pacing the barn, his flashlight sweeping the shadows. He didn't find us, but the close call shook me. The next day, I found a note in my bunkhouse locker, "God's watching." No signature, but I knew. I showed it to Elliot, expecting him to be angry, but he just pulled me close. "They're trying to scare us," he said. "Don't let them." But I was scared. That evening, we drove to the bar again, needing an escape. The music and lights felt like a different world. But even there, I couldn't relax. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting Roy's truck. Elliot noticed, pulling me close on the dance floor. "You're safe with me," he whispered, but I wasn't sure I believed it. When we got back, the stable's gate was open, the lock broken. Elliot's face was grim as we checked the barns. Nothing was stolen, but a message was scratched into the tack room door: "Sinners leave." My knees buckled. Elliot grabbed my hand, his voice fierce. "We're not running. Not yet." But the threats were closing in, and I could feel the walls of our world crumbling. Elliot's courage was a fire, but I was still learning how to burn. The broken lock was a warning shot, but it wasn't the last. The next morning, we found the tires on Elliot's truck slashed. He cursed, kicking the gravel, but his eyes were blazing. "They think they can break us," he said, grabbing my hand. "They're wrong." I wanted to believe him, but the fear was a living thing now, clawing at my insides. Pastor Dan's youth group didn't show up that weekend, but Roy was there every day, watching from his truck or lingering by the fence. The other stable hands started avoiding us, their whispers filling the air. "They know something," I told Elliot one night in his cabin. He nodded, his face tight. "Dan's been talking, spreading lies." He pulled out his phone, showing me a text from his friend in Colorado. "They're ready for us. We just need to go." I wanted to say yes, but the thought of leaving everything, me family, my past, felt like cutting off a limb. "I need time," I said, hating the weakness in my voice. Elliot's eyes softened, but there was pain there too. "We're running out of time, Caleb." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Roy's truck, Pastor Dan's cold smile. The words scratched into the tack room door. At dawn, I found Elliot in the barn, saddling a horse. "Ride with me," he said, his voice gentle but firm. We took the horses to the far fields, the mountains glowing in the morning light. For a moment, it was just us, the world quiet except for the hoofbeats. "I love you," he said, out of nowhere. His eyes locked on mine. The words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I wanted to say it back, but the fear choked me. Instead, I leaned over, kissing him hard, letting my body speak what my voice couldn't. He smiled against my lips, but there was a sadness in it. When we got back, Roy was waiting. "Had a nice ride?" he asked, his voice dripping with venom. Elliot stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Back off, Roy." The man just laughed, walking away, but I saw his phone in his hand, the camera pointed at us. My heart sank. That evening, Pastor Dan called a community meeting at the local church. Elliot refused to go, but I felt I had to. The room was packed, the air thick with judgment. Dan stood at the podium, his voice booming about protecting our values. He didn't name us, but every eye in the room turned to me. I left, my hand shaking, and found Elliot waiting outside. "You don't owe them anything," he said, pulling me into his truck. We drove to his cabin, and for the first time, I told him everything me father's sermons. The kid from high school, the fear that had defined my life. He listened, holding me tight, and when I was done, he said, "You're not that kid anymore. You're mine." I kissed him, desperate to believe it, but the world outside was closing in. The church meeting was a turning point. The town's whispers turned into shouts, and the stables felt like a battlefield. Clients started canceling lessons, citing concerns. The manager, a gruff but fair man named Tom, pulled us aside. "I don't care what you do on your own time," he said, "but Dan's stirring up trouble. Watch your backs." Elliot was defiant, but I could see the strain in his eyes. We stopped touching in public. Even brushing past each other felt risky. Roy's truck was a constant presence, parked just outside the stable's gate. One night, we found another note on Elliot's cabin door, "Last warning." I couldn't breathe, my mind spinning with images of that kid from Ohio, broken and gone. "We're leaving," Elliot said that night, his voice steady but urgent. "Tomorrow. I've got enough saved for bus tickets to Colorado." I stared at him, torn between love and terror. What if it's not enough? I whispered. He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing my tears. "You're enough. We're enough." The next morning, we packed in secret, planning to slip away at dawn. But as we loaded our bags into Elliot's truck, Roy appeared, blocking the gate. "Going somewhere?" he asked, a crowbar in his hand. My heart stopped, but Elliot stepped forward, unafraid. "Move, Roy. This doesn't concern you." Roy swung the crowbar, smashing the truck's headlight. "You're a disgrace," he spat. I grabbed Elliot's arm, pulling him back, my voice shaking. "Let's go, Elliot. Please." But before we could move, Tom appeared with a shotgun. "Get off my property, Roy," he said, his voice calm but deadly. Roy hesitated, then backed off, cursing. Tom turned to us. "Go. Now. I'll handle Dan." I could have cried with gratitude, but there was no time. We drove to the bus station, my heart pounding with every mile. As the bus pulled out, Elliot's hand found mine, his grip steady. "We're free," he whispered, and for the first time, I believed it. The ride to Colorado was long, the landscape blurring past. I leaned against Elliot, his warmth grounding me. "What if they come after us?" I asked, the fear still lingering. He kissed my forehead. "Then we fight. Together." His words were a promise, one I was starting to trust. Colorado was a new world. The ranch was nestled in the Rockies, vast and open. The sky so big it felt like it could swallow my fears. Elliot's friend, Maria, welcomed us with a hug and a room in her bunkhouse. "You're safe here," she said, and I saw the truth in her eyes. This was a place where we could be ourselves. The work was hard, long days herding cattle, fixing fences, but it was honest. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. Elliot and I shared a bed. No more hiding. No more locked gates. At night, we'd sit under the stars, his head on my shoulder, talking about a future we could finally see. But the past wasn't gone. A month in, I got a letter from my father, forwarded from Virginia. "Come home and repent," it read. I burned it, but the words lingered. Elliot found me staring at the fire, my hands shaking. "You don't need his approval," he said, pulling me close. "You're enough." He was right, but it took time to believe it. Maria introduced us to a community, people like us, living openly, fearlessly. I started to heal, the shame loosening its grip. One night, I told Elliot I loved him, the words finally free. His smile was brighter than the stars, and he kissed me like it was the first time. Months later, we heard Pastor Dan had been run out of town for fraud, Roy trailing behind him. The news felt like a weight lifting, but it didn't define us anymore. We were building a life, our life. The ranch became our home, the horses our peace, and each other our strength. One evening, as we rode out to a quiet valley, Elliot stopped his horse and pulled me close. "I thought they were just riding lessons," he said, echoing the words that started it all. I laughed, my heart full. "Yeah," I said, "until you locked the gate." He kissed me, the mountains watching, and I knew we'd found our freedom not just from the world, but from ourselves. The gate was open now, and we were never going back.